Hello, welcome to Heart Explained Therapy. The name of the game for me is to get pointers out there that make you learn a new perspective on reality. And one of the things I've been thinking about recently is how much people are stuck with their past experience, how much that affects them in everyday life. Now, we have at the moment a mind that works by sort of creating an impression on our mind for future events. So what I'm talking about is if you go out today and you go and cross a road on a blind corner and a car comes speeding round and you sort of jump out of the way of this car, you'll remember this fact, you'll probably tell people about this fact, and you will make an impression in your mind. The experience itself has gone and it no longer exists, but the impression of that experience exists as a memory in your mind going forward. You would hope the lesson to be learnt from it is that you do not cross on a blind corner. You go further up the road, you go round the corner where you can see distance. And sometimes you might not learn the right lesson and you cross over again, and this time you might not be so lucky. So this is the way that, simple terminology for the way that we work as a human mental construct. Now, where this becomes problematic, and in a way it kind of, you can view it as sort of nonsense in the end. You live your life by all of these impressions, and that's not actually the way that you should live life. You should live life as if every sort of scenario, give or take, eating, sleeping, you know, the animal instinctual events of survival. Apart from that, main core experiences of relationships and hurt and grief of the past does not need to make an impression on your life today. And in mental health, and when you are a therapist, you hear a lot of people who, as you dig a little deeper, they are holding on massively with this experience, and when they speak about it, they go straight back to the feelings of the time they had this event, and it's like the constant trauma is constantly with you, when truthfully it is external now, it has gone. It is a memory of the past that you can never change, but the future and the present is yours for the changing. And it's these impressions that we have to rethink and retrain our mind to view in a different way. And this is a key element of the healing process for me. So you have a bad trauma, you have a bad experience, and the first reason I suppose this impression is there is to protect you. You're in a bad relationship, certain flaws in this personality that you don't get on with, and you first of all hopefully project into a situation where you avoid that again. Now, unfortunately, our unconscious and subconscious that's making this sort of impression doesn't know when it's actually good or bad anymore. It just knows that you don't want to feel and go back to something that reminds you of traumatic experience. So how can we change this impression? I think there's two sort of ways. I think you have to first of all understand what those things in the past is. I think there's definitely a reason why we have to go back there sometimes, and I think it's to take away this impression. I don't know if anybody's ever watched Harry Potter, but there's a scene in that where they take memories out of a professor's mind, and if you think that what we're going to do is not take this sort of memory out of your mind and throw it away, because this is actually part of the story. It's actually a very good thing. It's not bad, because you're going to eventually learn the best lesson and grow and expand from this experience. But the impression has been wrong. You've connected that you have guilt, you have fault, you're to blame. And at the moment, whether you was even the person that did something wrong, you can still accept you was unconscious, you was unexperienced, you was a lot of the traumatic experiences happen at a young age. When, I mean, an elderly person can still have a traumatic experience, but the effect of an 85-year-old having a traumatic experience is going to be them handling it for the next few years. I think when you have it when you're 5 or 10, you've got a whole life to live. And so I've seen people, I've worked in care with elderly people, I've worked in with people with dementia, I've worked with people with mental health problems and disabilities, and you see this concurrent impression existing in the experience of now, and they're a million miles from the reality. However, it's like they are there and they're trapped, and you could almost say that sometimes you're talking to the inner child of a person, lost and stuck and imprisoned in that place. So I think, first of all, let's tackle how we would go back and view the event. First of all, you probably don't want to go there because it makes you feel uncomfortable. This is something that you have to do. You have to go back there and you have to make light of that current dark energy that's formed. You have to, if it's something that you feel that you have, you can be guilty for, you have to accept you as inexperienced, young and unconscious, and you was trying to be comfortable, you was trying to live life, and you made mistakes. You have to forgive yourself, and then forgive the way that people treated you around that. And if it wasn't your fault and something happened to you and you was a nice person, for me, it's quite, you know, in a way, I would propose it's easier to forgive that, because you definitely wasn't putting yourself in a position to be a victim. You didn't choose your circumstances. Now this goes for people who have been in toxic relationships, or some people who have been in abusive, around abusive parents. There's so many traumas that are trauma, muggings, burglaries. The biggest one for me that I see a lot is separated homes, mothers and fathers that split up when children are young, and adults still have grief from this. They still have problems with this. They still have difficult relationships with parents today, and that goes into their relationships, and it sadly goes then to the next generation down of the children that they're bringing up. So it's a massive thing on understanding the past and rewriting that impression that it made, and it's making light of the energy. Making, I know somebody who says that they will never talk about a certain subject. Let's just say it's grief of a lost person in their life that they loved, and they never mention that person because it's too raw and emotional to mention. Now for me, that is not grief. That is not grieving over that person. It's almost like that person cannot accept the loss of another human being, and unfortunately that means that they fear death. That means because they fear death, they fear health. Because they fear health, they've actually got bad health because they're in a place of constant anxiety. Now in that place of constant anxiety, they have bad behaviour and bad emotions spilling out into relationships, and it's difficult for them to get on along with anybody for more than a day or two without this sort of fear the impression of the past becoming the experience of the moment, of the time. So make light of it. Talk about something that's uncomfortable over and over again. Do this with yourself at first, then pass it on to somebody else. Talk about the past that was uncomfortable as much as you can, and you retrain your subconscious to see that it's something you can deal with now, you can handle. I mean, first of all, it's just words. Let's say my mum, my dad has passed away. Say they're not here anymore. And then you'll start to lose the energy of the darkness. And what happens then, the light that comes up, is you realise that the memory and the impression that needs to be taken is that they are always with you, alive inside your heart. The memories that you have, the photographs that you look at that remind you of a feeling, and you realise that you not accepting this sort of, and you can do this with past trauma, forgive yourself for almost anything that ever happened to you, whether you was the victim or whether you was the perpetrator. And I think this lightening of the energy makes you able to see it in a new perspective for the first time, and that perspective is going to be positive, a positive outcome. And then you wouldn't fear death as much, you wouldn't fear health as much, and once you don't fear health as much, you watch the way that the mind works, it then makes you physically healthier. It's an incredible system. And I'm going to go on to a part 2 of this video about the second thing that we need to do.